Analysts. Your argument, just to explain this to our viewers, essentially comes down to these two sentences in the Constitution's 14th Amendment. No person shall be a senator or representative in Congress or elector of president and vice president who, having previously taken an oath as an officer of the United States to support the Constitution of the United States, shall have engaged in insurrection or rebellion against the same or given aid or comfort to the enemies thereof.
Right now, there's something pretty significant happening on Capitol Hill that really deserves attention. Several United States senators who are part of one of the most powerful legislative bodies in the world are stepping up and publicly calling for Donald Trump to be removed from office. And they're not talking about doing this sometime in the future or after his term wraps up. No, they're pushing for this action while he's still sitting in the Oval Office, still making decisions that impact everyone in the country and many beyond our borders. What's more striking is how they're approaching this. They aren't using vague statements or coded language that lets them maintain some political distance. Instead, they're presenting formal legislative actions, resolutions in both the Senate and the House of Representatives that use very clear and strong language based on the Constitution.
In a new piece in The Atlantic, constitutional scholars Lawrence Tribe and former Judge Michael Luttig write this, quote, "The former president's efforts to overturn the 2020 presidential election and the resulting attack on the U.S. Capitol place him squarely within the ambit of the Constitution's disqualification clause, and he is therefore ineligible to serve as president ever again."
These resolutions are invoking the 14th Amendment's insurrection clause. They're essentially stating that Donald Trump should be disqualified from holding any federal office again. On top of that, there's also a censure resolution condemning him for undermining the rule of law. It's honestly hard to believe that this is unfolding right now, and it's truly extraordinary to see elected officials taking such bold steps.
Our president holds the ultimate public trust. When he betrays that trust and puts himself before country, he endangers the Constitution, he endangers our democracy, and he endangers our national security. The framers of the Constitution prescribed a clear remedy for presidents who so violate their oath of office.
I mean, Donald Trump isn't just going to admit he's disqualified, right? We're witnessing a really unusual moment in American politics. Right now, a sitting senator is actually on camera claiming that Donald Trump isn't mentally fit for the position he holds. He's suggesting that the vice president and the cabinet should invoke the 25th Amendment to remove Trump from power. What's wild is that this isn't just one-off remarks. It's a collective wave of rejection from Congress happening all at once. Both
being a paragon of peace. Donald Trump wants to declare war on Greenland because Norway hurt his feelings by not giving him a Nobel Peace Prize. That is why we need to invoke the 25th Amendment, because that is lunacy. We cannot sleepwalk into World War III. As Dr. King said, the time is always right to do what is right. And right now, that means we have to fight.
The Senate and the House are taking action with disqualification and censure measures, and individual lawmakers are calling for Trump to resign or be removed under the 25th Amendment. 3 different constitutional paths are converging, all aimed at the same president, with a unified message that Trump is unfit for office and that something needs to be done to prevent more damage. There's a noticeable tension among Republicans across the country. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis tweeted about it, mentioning that special elections can be unpredictable, but the swings happening lately cannot be ignored.
Because President Trump is escalating his rhetoric ahead of the midterm elections. The president yesterday called for Republicans to take over elections while ranting about his 2020 loss to Joe Biden. Trump made the comments during an interview with right-wing podcaster, also former FBI Deputy Director Dan Bongino.
These people were brought to our country to vote, and they vote illegally.
What has him and his fellow Republicans on edge? Well, it all revolves around a special election for a state Senate seat in Texas, particularly in the Fort Worth area. And let me tell you, this isn't just any swing. It's a massive one. The Texas 9th Senate District, a place that Donald Trump previously won by 17 points, just flipped dramatically to the left. It's honestly hard to believe how quickly things have changed. This moment really stands out as something we've never seen before. In the past, members of Congress have criticized presidents or pushed for investigations, which is pretty normal. It's just part of how our system operates.
Over the last several months, the investigative committees of the House have been engaged in an impeachment inquiry into President Donald Trump's efforts to solicit foreign interference in the 2020 elections, efforts that compromised our national security and threatened the integrity of our elections.
But what we're witnessing now goes far beyond typical criticism or standard political opposition. It's more like a multi-pronged constitutional effort utilizing every tool that the founders provided Congress to hold a president accountable. And it's unfolding in real time while he's still in office, wielding full presidential powers. Take the censure resolution, for instance. It doesn't just argue against Trump's policies. It officially condemns him for his attacks on judges, threats to use the military within the country, and his attempts to undermine elections. Then there's the Senate resolution, which doesn't just show disappointment. It actually calls on the insurrection clause of the 14th Amendment, the very part of our Constitution created after the Civil War to keep people who've rebelled against the United States from holding office again. And this clause is directly applied to Donald Trump by name. The calls for the 25th Amendment aren't simply some political stunt either. They represent a public demand from a sitting senator for the vice president and the cabinet to take the unusual step of declaring the president unable to perform his job. Each of these actions would be a major story on their own. But together, happening at the same time, they create an intense wave of institutional pressure that no sitting president has faced since Richard Nixon was advised by his own party to resign. So today, I'm going to break down everything for you. We'll look at the disqualification resolution and what the 14th Amendment really entails, dive into the censure resolution and its impact on Trump's legacy, explore the 25th Amendment demands, and assess whether they might actually succeed. Plus, we'll discuss the broader trend of Congress viewing this president not just as a political rival, but as a constitutional crisis that requires immediate action. Let's dive into each of these actions separately, because while they each have their own legal and political implications, they're all connected in this remarkable chapter of American governance. What's really striking here is how various political actions all seem to share a common belief. Donald Trump's behavior while in office has crossed some serious lines. This isn't just your usual political squabble. That's about a perceived threat that's so significant, the normal wait until the next election just won't cut it. There's a clear understanding across different resolutions, whether it's about disqualification, censure, or invoking the 25th Amendment. They're all saying the same thing, that we can't afford to sit back and wait any longer. The urgency is palpable, with concerns about damage to our democratic institutions, constitutional norms, and the rule of law happening in real time. By the time the next election rolls around, we might be dealing with issues that can't be fixed. It really paints a picture of how unprecedented this situation is, almost like we're in a political emergency here. Whether or not you agree with this view, it's important to recognize that members of the Senate and House of Representatives have come to this conclusion and are putting their names on formal resolutions which deserve serious consideration from every American. Let's dive into the disqualification resolution, which is officially known as Senate Resolution 154. This one is particularly significant. Constitutionally speaking, it carries some heavy weight, and its implications could be widespread. Introduced in March 2025, this resolution states that Donald Trump shouldn't be eligible to run for president or vice president in future elections, and he can't serve beyond his current term. The legal backing for this resolution is found in Section 3 of the 14th Amendment, a little-known but powerful part of the Constitution. This section came about after the Civil War and was designed to keep former Confederate officials who were once sworn in to protect the Constitution, then turned against it from regaining government power. The wording is quite broad. Anyone who has taken an oath to uphold the Constitution and then participated in insurrection or rebellion or helped those who did is disqualified from holding any federal office. It really opens up the conversation about accountability and the importance of upholding democratic principles. So there's this important resolution from the Senate named Senate Resolution 154 that specifically calls out Donald Trump It's all about his actions surrounding January 6th and his attempts to overturn the 2020 election, labeling it as insurrection or rebellion. This is significant because it suggests he should be disqualified from holding future office under the disqualification clause. But let's keep it real. This resolution, while it carries a lot of political weight, isn't legally binding on its own. Essentially, it reflects the Senate's opinion, and a court would have to decide whether the 14th Amendment actually disqualifies him. The Supreme Court has already touched on related questions, which only adds to the complexity of the situation. Even without immediate legal implications, the political impact is huge. It officially places the Senate stamp on record, declaring that a sitting president engaged in insurrection and that he should be barred from future positions. That's quite a bold statement for such a prominent institution to make about someone currently in office. Plus, it lays down a formal record that will be referenced in future discussions and will shape the historical context of this presidency long after Trump is out of the picture. Now, shifting gears a bit, there's also this censure resolution that's more likely to pass and still carries a lot of weight, even if it doesn't lead to removal. House Resolution 165, brought up in February 2026 with backing from Senate allies, officially condemns Trump for behavior that undermines the rule of law, democratic institutions, and public trust. What's interesting here is that the resolution spells out the specific actions it's condemning. It points to Trump's negative comments about federal judges, his threats to use the military for domestic enforcement, and his attempts to disrupt elections through executive orders. All of these claims have a public record backing them up, including court decisions, congressional testimony, and his own statements. When it comes to attacking judges, this is no mere allegation. Trump has openly threatened judges who ruled against him, and his Justice Department has even sought out judges to target for impeachment. The censure resolution isn't just throwing around vague claims. It's actually highlighting specific actions that are documented and unacceptable. Congress is officially condemning the president because these actions undermine democratic governance. Now, censure doesn't kick a president out of office or impose legal penalties, but it does represent a formal rebuke from the whole legislature, which is essentially saying that the president's behavior is disgraceful. Historically, these censure resolutions have paved the way for more serious actions later on, creating a record that could support impeachment or other accountability measures in the future. The resolution even acknowledges that this isn't the end of the line. It's more like a marker that documents ongoing misconduct and keeps the door open for stronger actions if things don't change. Then there's the call for invoking the 25th Amendment, which is the most dramatic and, in some cases, desperate approach of the three constitutional mechanisms being mentioned. Back in January 2026, Democratic Senator Ed Markey made a bold move by calling for Trump's removal under this amendment, making it clear he believed Trump was unstable and had mismanaged foreign policy. Markey pointed out that Trump had even tried to use the military and law enforcement for his own political benefit, claiming that Trump isn't mentally fit for his position and urging the vice president and the cabinet to act. The 25th Amendment, specifically Section 4, lays out how a president can be removed if they can't carry out their duties. It requires the vice president and a majority of the cabinet to agree that the president is incapacitated, allowing the vice president to take over. This amendment was initially created for situations involving physical incapacity, like if a president suffers a stroke or goes into a coma. Making it clear this is a serious mechanism for dealing with extreme circumstances. It's quite something to think about, but if anyone were to remove a president for being unfit due to behavior or temperament instead of, say, a medical issue, this would really be a first. The hurdles, political and constitutional in nature, are massive. For starters, the vice president would need to turn against their own boss. Then a majority of cabinet members, all handpicked by Trump and serving at his discretion, would have to come together to declare him unfit. If Trump decided to challenge that declaration, which of course he would, Congress would require a two-thirds vote in both the House and Senate to go through with the removal. Those are some incredibly high stakes in today's political climate. Senator Markey and the other Democrats pushing for this action certainly seem aware of this. their goal isn't necessarily to kick off the actual process laid out in the 25th Amendment. Instead, they're aiming to firmly establish on record that members of the Senate believe the president isn't mentally fit to serve, and that every constitutional option for dealing with this should be considered. This is all part of making a broader institutional case alongside other measures like disqualification resolutions, censure resolutions, and impeachment efforts happening in the House. The prevailing sentiment is that this presidency has crossed some serious constitutional lines that demand a collective institutional response. When I step back and take in everything happening in Congress right now, those disqualification resolutions, the censure calls, the conversations about the 25th Amendment, and the impeachment talks, a clear pattern emerges. Both the House and Senate are creating a series of formal documents, all saying the same message. This president poses a danger. He is unfit. He has breached his oath. His actions threaten our constitutional order, and he ought to be removed, censured, or disqualified, or maybe even all three. Yet, here's the kicker. Do those advocating for these measures actually have the votes to remove Trump from office right now? Not at all. The House majority has effectively blocked any movement on impeachment proceedings, and the Senate lacks the necessary 2-3 majority for a conviction. Plus, pursuing the 25th Amendment would require support from a vice president and cabinet who are likely not on board with that idea. What's happening right now is pretty remarkable, and it's crucial to understand the impact, even if it feels like these efforts can't lead to immediate change. While some actions might not have enough votes to actually remove Trump from office, they're still significant. They're creating an official record that captures exactly what this president has done using the formal language of Congress. This record won't just fade away. It'll be a vital piece of history that historians, legal scholars, and lawmakers will refer to for many years to come. It sets the stage for future discussions around this period, ensuring that no one can claim that the dangers were ignored or that no one tried to raise the alarm. The alarm is indeed being sounded now, and it's done in the strongest constitutional way. The pressing question is whether anyone in a position to take action will step up before the situation gets irreparable. I can imagine some folks are wondering why there's any point in filing censure resolutions or invoking the 25th Amendment when the votes for actual removal seem impossible to gather. It's a valid concern, and it deserves a direct response because the answer is more significant than many think. The point really is all about the record. When future generations take a look back at this extraordinary moment in American history, which they surely will, there will be a formal record produced by Congress that lays out precisely what the president did and how serious the risk was considered at that time. They'll discover Senate resolutions that call for invoking the insurrection clause of the 14th Amendment, along with censure resolutions that condemn actions like attacking judges, threatening military force against civilians, and interfering with elections. They'll see impeachment resolutions that detail accusations of abuse of power, unconstitutional war arm making and tyranny. Some senators will even be on record stating that the president is mentally unfit and should be removed via the 25th Amendment. This record holds immense importance, not just as a historical reference, but also as a constitutional precedent that could influence how future crises are handled. One of the biggest takeaways from recent political events is the Senate Resolution 154, which highlights a long-term threat to Trump's political future through the lens of the 14th Amendment Disqualification Resolution. Although it doesn't have an immediate legal impact, it's important because it signifies that the Senate sees Trump's actions as insurrection. While this doesn't disqualify him on its own, it does establish a legislative finding that could be referenced in future court cases. It also applies political pressure on senators to take a stance on whether they believe Trump's behavior amounted to insurrection. This concern about disqualification isn't just going to fade away. It was a major focus in the Colorado ballot case that reached the Supreme Court and has sparked extensive legal discussions. Once Trump's term wraps up and talks of a third term or continued political influence start bubbling up again, the fact that the Senate has formally recognized his actions as insurrection will play a crucial role in the arguments for disqualification. While it might not be the final word, it definitely holds weight, and it's vital to lay this groundwork now while everything is still fresh in the public's mind. This way, we won't have to reconstruct the case for disqualification from scratch later on. Another significant point is regarding the censure resolution. Even though it doesn't have the power to remove Trump from office, it serves as an essential formal rebuke that's permanent and can't be undone. There's a clear reason why Trump and his supporters fight so hard against censure despite its lack of removal authority. It leaves a lasting mark on his presidency, signaling that Congress deemed his conduct completely unacceptable, prompting them to formally condemn it. This formal statement doesn't just disappear, it becomes part of the historical record and gets stored in the congressional archives, making it a permanent reminder of his actions. There's something about this presidency that leaves a permanent mark, something that can't just be brushed away with a pardon or an executive order. Sure, a president has the power to pardon people, veto bills, and even issue orders that roll back what previous leaders did, but they can't erase a formal censure. Once Congress passes a censure, it sticks around forever, and it carries serious implications. This censure stands tall alongside accusations of undermining our democratic institutions, making threats to judges and tampering with elections, serving as an enduring judgment on the character and behavior of this presidency. This is definitely significant. It plays a crucial role in our historical narrative, sets a warning about what Congress finds unacceptable, and lays the groundwork for any future actions that might hold a president accountable. After all, if Congress has gone on record saying a president's actions were harmful and unlawful, it's really hard for him to claim that the criticisms are just politically motivated. And here's the third important point, which I really think you should keep in mind. While the 25th Amendment might not actually lead to Trump being removed from office, it does serve an essential purpose. It marks a moment when senators formally question the president's ability to do his job. That's a pretty big deal. When a sitting senator looks straight into a camera and states that the President of the United States isn't mentally fit for the role, that comment becomes part of the ongoing discussion about this presidency. Historians and analysts will reference this statement when examining this time period, reminding everyone that elected officials who have access to classified information and firsthand experience of the president's behavior felt he wasn't capable of fulfilling his duties. No matter where you stand on this discussion, the fact that it was made publicly and officially by those in leadership positions carries weight that isn't easily brushed off as just party politics. Senators don't take invoking the 25th Amendment lightly. They certainly don't suggest removing a sitting president over concerns about his mental fitness without serious thought. What's going on at Capitol Hill isn't just one big showdown to wrap up in a single vote. Instead, it's like the creation of a huge institutional record being pieced together with resolutions for censure, disqualification efforts, articles of impeachment, demands for the 25th Amendment, and formal findings from Congress. This isn't just a temporary moment. It's the most detailed case the legislative branch has ever built against a sitting president. And they're doing this while the current presidency is still underway. They're facing a tough reality. They probably don't have enough votes to remove Trump right now. Yet what they're crafting will endure past his time in office. Future courts will reference this record when dealing with questions of disqualification, and historians will lean on it when they recount this period. The folks putting this record together are determined to make it as thorough and compelling as possible because it's crucial to document what's happening and who's responsible while it's all unfolding.